Listen to the Vibes, hosted by Coyote Night. Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes broadcast network. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I have my good friend here, 𝗚'𝗚 𝗖𝗪 from the UK, but he is not in the UK at the moment. So you want to tell everybody where you're at?
Sure, yeah. I'm currently sitting in an Airbnb attempting to get through this quarantine craziness in Lima. I've just spent 3 months in the Amazon rainforest doing some shamanic training, which was fantastic. And we really landed on our feet being in the rainforest just before the whole pandemic hit the world. So very grateful for that. But I'm feeling like time is right to go home. So we've managed to get ourselves to Lima and we're waiting on a flight back to Europe. We live in Portugal now and looking forward to heading back to that quality of nature as soon as we can.
Oh, I hear you, man. It's been crazy. I mean, you were in the jungle when all this just took off and everybody got quarantined. And I just can imagine how you felt when you came out and they're like, oh, you can't go nowhere. You're stuck here.
We had a little bit of pre-warning. The plan originally was that we were going to have a group joining us out in the rainforest. I tend to go there most years, take a small group of people who are interested in their own kind of personal spiritual development and you know, from a shamanic perspective. And I have a shaman, a maestro who I've been studying with for over a decade now. And when I go out there, I usually take a group of people with me. And I decided this year that we were going to go out and spend a month on our own first in advance of our group coming, so that when our group came, I could really focus on taking care of them and not kind of get FOMO and you know, miss out on doing our own process. So halfway through my own process, we call it dieta, and I can explain about that in a bit if you like. I got a message from one of the guys saying, well, it looks like Peru's closed its borders to the rest of the world because of this coronavirus. I was like, oh, it'll blow over. I reckon by the time my group's gonna come, it'll all be blown over and it'll just, you know, it'll be a very short, quick passing phase. Anyway, it didn't pass so quickly and they couldn't come. So I spent my month there, I spent their months there and then another month there. Yeah, we had little bits of information about what was going on in the world. Yeah. But very protected place to be. I think anywhere in the nature is going to be a very protected place to be. It's only really, from what I can understand, where the high concentration of people are, where there's the most problems. And I think that's true of life in general. I think those people who live out in the nature generally have an easier life than those who live in the cities.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it is in this world. Just being on top of each other all the time, I guess, it just causes so much strife and misery. And that's why I refuse to live inside the city. I'm going to stay out where people are a little more spread out, you know? But yeah.
I don't blame you.
But we met about 2 years ago. Pretty close.
Yeah, it must be about that.
Yeah, and so anyway, I had a little show on another network, and he was gracious enough to come on, and we've been spending a little time trying to catch up because we hadn't talked in a while. I know you had some plans that kind of got dashed here and there, and same here. But man, just fill us in on what's going on, man.
I mean, it's a very interesting time that we live in. And even though I've been quite remote, I feel like I'm still somewhat plugged in with what's going on in the world. And what I'm seeing happening is lots of people locked up together with their nearest and dearest, and not having time because they're lots of fighting, lots of arguing, lots of bickering because of being so intensely close together and not having that kind of me time because we're all huddled together in our small homes, and people having lots of really interesting challenges, and people going through some kind of identity crises because they're not able to do the things that they want to do, that they associate with being so much part of their personality, and they're struggling to really know who they are. And I see this as all an amazing opportunity to really get to know ourselves, because as I mentioned, this process that we go through when we're in the forest, it's called dieta. And essentially we're fasting. We're eating very plain food, just no salt, no sugar, very low vibration, rice and plantains and potatoes. And then we're ingesting a tree or a plant medicine. And we sit with that, and because of the time that we're spending on our own, and that we have heightened our senses by limiting the amount of stimulus that comes into our body through our food and other external stimulus, we really get to sit with ourselves. And it's very much like the process that the Indian yogis would have gone through in the mountains and the forest of India, sitting in the Himalayas, meditating for years on end. And we're doing similar things in the forest. And this being alone allows us to really see ourselves. We can be alone with our thoughts, be alone with our feelings. And this creates a space where we can get to know ourselves a lot better. I think this quarantine situation has forced people into a situation where they really get to see themselves and look at themselves more deeply. There's a lot less distraction going on. Okay, people are watching a lot of Netflix and, possibly playing a lot of video games and being quite active on social media. But there's also more opportunity for people to be alone. And I think that's quite scary for people, because they're not so comfortable with the majority of thoughts that go through their mind. But by sitting there and observing that, you get to know yourself better. You get to see yourself in relationship with the person who you're living with. And I think in terms of relationships, I think if people have a commitment to being in the relationship and using the relationship as a vehicle to journey through our evolution, then the relationships can reveal a lot that can be very, very healing.
And the sad reality is I know a lot of couples that seemed like they had a really good relationship, and now they're talking divorce and separation, and it's sad. This should be the time where you come together. And I'll have to say, since this went down, my wife and I have never been closer. I mean, we don't have that distance of, we're both at work for 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever a day. And, we see each other for 5 minutes in the evening, barely enough time to sit down, eat a meal, take a shower, and then go back to bed and start all over again. And now we wake up together, we have breakfast together. We're working in the same room all day, and, sitting down for a nice meal, and we have a nice quiet evening. The TV is usually off during the day. We might have music playing, but we're spending that time together. Yeah, we are doing the Netflix thing, but that's, a couple hours in the evening. But we're really getting to know each other. That's the way things should be.
I think so. I mean, that's a sign that you have had a good relationship for a long time. I think a lot of people who think they have a good relationship, but are actually spending most of the time avoiding each other or apart, this kind of situation scenario really highlights that for people. When we spend so much time intimately together, our stuff comes up. We trigger each other. And I'm sure you and your wife are triggering each other somewhat as well. But if you have the kind of level of maturity where you can observe this process of being triggered and how we react, and we can actually help each other through that process of eliminating those triggers and finding out what our internal cause of those triggers are, so that we can, heal those wounds. Essentially, they come from wounds, mostly from childhood. And I guess the best relationships are either with people who don't have childhood wounds, which is kind of rare, or people who agree that no matter what, we're going to stay together and we're going to work through whatever it is. And as our stuff comes up, we support each other in a loving, nurturing, caring way. And I think those people who are separating now and going through divorces now, they're just realizing that they can't hide their stuff anymore, or they can't avoid the other stuff. And perhaps there isn't the commitment to work through it, or just even the acknowledgement that this stuff that we're fighting over is just stuff from our past, temporary stuff. It's not really in the now.
Well, we've just seemed to go through the motions in life, and you've heard that term, stop and smell the roses, but do we really do that when we're always constantly here, there, and everywhere? And you know, I guess this has kind of been a good thing, but at the same time, you know, we've got so much strife going on in this world, and you being a shaman, you kind of have that view that most people don't have. So please go on.
um, well, you know, we can look at this from a very Zen perspective as well. The philosophies, the ancient and the beautiful philosophies of this world, they overlap so nicely. And in Zen, they talk about, and Taoism as well, they talk about how the good and bad are really just concepts of human mind. A lot of people feel like this lockdown scenario that we're in, it's the worst thing that's happened. You know, people are having to stay inside, and they can't do this, they can't do that, and it's bad and it's terrible. But that's a viewpoint. Actually, good and bad, they're really concepts that only exist within the human consciousness. Other people choosing to see this lockdown scenario as something that's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for me. I know a lot of people who are being paid 80% of their regular wage and not having to go to work. It's like some kind of government bailout. There's a name for it. I forget what it is. But these people are receiving a similar income that they had. They've got no expenses, and they're able to stay at home and do whatever they like and still get paid for it. This is a fantastic opportunity to do so many different things. If one chooses to see it as an opportunity, then there's so many options available. Those people who always wanted to write a book, those people who always wanted to spend time creating a beautiful garden, or those people who really wanted to start up a yoga practice or a meditation practice for themselves every day, or you know, whatever it is, that spend more time with our spouse. There's so many wonderful opportunities. But if we choose to see this as a bad thing, then it's a bad thing. If we choose to see it as a good thing, it's a good thing. And you know, whether you're a Zen Buddhist or a shaman, the philosophical viewpoint is the same. Reality is what we choose it to be, what we make it, what we decide it's going to be in our minds.
You know, before we got on air, we were talking about duality, and I would love for you to kind of further explain that, because that was a great point that you made.
Okay. Okay, so there's two yous, really. You know, there's the mind-body-ego combination that we see when we look in the mirror. You know, we interact with other people generally from this place. But there's another you that's the eternal you, the spirit that inhabits the body, that when the mind-body-ego complex dies, still lives and transmigrates to another body or to another place, goes to heaven, or, you know, whatever. You know, many options. And for the second self, the less the more temporary self, the mind, body, ego, to react to live in this world, there has to be a duality, because if it's all one, as you know, some people believe, yeah, it's all one, man, it's for a kind of very hippie thing to say, then there's no opportunity for me to experience a conversation or to watch a sunset, because I am the sunset. You can't have a conversation if there's no duality. You can't appreciate the beauty of you know, the sun shining on your face if you are the sun. And there is a part of us that is everything, that is all is one. God is everything, and we are part of God, so therefore we are part of everything. But in order to have experience, there needs to be a duality. We need to be able to separate ourselves from everything else so that we can experience. So everything we experience is through relationship with everything else. And everybody has that dualistic perspective. So there's infinite number of perspectives within this dualistic reality, so that experience can happen, almost so that God can experience reality, or so that love can exist. Love can't exist if there's no duality. If everything is one, then it's kind of boring. Nothing really happens.
Right.
So we need this relationship. We need this relationship. And we were talking about the issues that have been very present about racism lately. The us and the them, and the fear and the hate of other people, you know, people who look different than us, or sound different, or come from different places. And yes, there is a difference, and you know, on the one hand, we can accept that there is a difference, but at the same time, we're all born of the same mother, you know, the Mother Earth is the mother of all of us. And from this perspective, we're all connected, we're all related. So the hatred aspect of racism is a nonsense. It's born out of illusion that we are, you know, not part of the same thing. But at the same time, there are differences. And actually, in funny kind of ways, you know, anthropologists and you know, people who studied sort of social sciences for a long time have realized that, you know, that built into the genetics of a human being is actually almost like a racist gene. There is a natural fear of people from other places. Back in the day when we were all hunter-gatherers and there were tribes from, you know, roaming around the earth looking for their, you know, their next meal, if they were to come across another tribe, there would naturally be this fear, this apprehension of this other tribe. So I think racism is something that is part of the human condition, but it's also been something that's become politicized, if that's a word. You know, it's been something that's woven into the politics of our culture and society, and it's become something quite dirty. You know, and a lot of, you know, very horrible things happen with racism as an influence. So we need to learn to manage that, and I guess that's part of being in a dualistic world. It's okay. So there is difference, there is oneness. What's the balance point between these two?
Sure.
And I guess that's for each individual to find. I like to see how we're all related. And, you know, I see someone who looks different to me as a reflection of myself, as a brother from another mother. You know, you might put it that way.
Yeah.
We are.
You know, ever since all this started, I made the decision that I really didn't want to be involved in you know, anything that would lead to, I guess, a political discussion or you know, because no matter what you say, people are going to argue with you. But I was telling my wife the other day that you know, even though I didn't want to talk specifically about, you know, racism, this kind of thing, I think it's time we sat down and came up with a solution. Now we've put our grievances out there. Okay, well then let's solve the problem. Fighting, arguing, killing each other, loitering, destruction's just not getting it done. We have to be able to sit down and talk. So, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've tried these things for so many generations now, and racism's still there, and people are still suffering as a result of racism. It's a really ugly thing. There's a very interesting prophecy that comes from the Hopi tribe of Colombia. They say that now we are existing in the time of the corn people. The people are like corn. Corn comes in many colors. Out here in Peru, we have purple corn, we have white corn, we have red corn, we have you know, different colors like that. And human beings are like that. We have different colored human beings. But we're moving into an age that's called the time of the honey people, where all the races start to mix together, all become the same color, all our skin becomes the same color like honey. And at times like that, then, you know, the racism becomes the very obsolete, ancient, outdated, because we're all the same. So I think it's something that naturally is going to just come to an end as we move forward. I think there's enough people on this planet right now who are aware of racism from a higher perspective. You know, we realize that it's a nonsense. It's something that's been used for political gain. It's something to be used, has been used to manipulate populations to gain power as an excuse to enslave other races.
Get favor from other races as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But we're, as a species, as humanity, we're evolving beyond these kind of very old-fashioned, outdated viewpoints. And it's a slow, incremental growth, but I think it's something that we're not going to see on this planet in 100 years' time. I think it's something that we're outgrowing. So, but it requires us to have an awareness of what it is and where we would like to go in order for that, you know, that change to take place. Fighting, it's not going to make a difference, because whatever you resist will persist, but whatever is observed will change. So by observing the state of the world, by seeing the racism out there, and not hating on it, blessing it, blessing the people who are stuck in the old ways of being racist, or any kind of prejudice, any kind of, all these prejudices, sexism, ageism, all these things, nationalism, they're all a nonsense. They will all fall away. Let's witness them, let's see them for what they are, and realize that there's no love in these places. And none of these things actually bring any happiness or any joy or any benefit to anybody's lives. The more we can see that, the more we start looking to different ways of doing things. And slowly by slowly, these things, they just all fall away. But we need to bless it. We can't hate on these things, because it just makes it worse.
You know
it's
why?
A beautiful...
No, go ahead. Sorry.
There's a beautiful mantra from the Hawaiian shamanic culture. It's called Ho'oponopono. And the mantra goes, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And this is chanted over and over again. You could do it on beads like they do in India with their prayer beads, or the Islamists, they chant their prayers on beads. You could do the same way. Just to keep this prayer on your mind, on your lips. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Whatever comes up in the mind, offer this prayer to it. And this is a very magical, transformatory ability, this prayer. And we chant this to everything. So when racism comes up, I love you. Thinking about a person of another race, well, I love you. I'm sorry for everything I've done or my ancestors done to offend you and to offend your culture. And, please forgive me. Asking for forgiveness is very powerful. I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. And by offering this prayer to everything, energies change. Energies change in a magical way.
I try to extend my love out to everyone, and I have come to grips with things that I've done in the past, but I don't feel like I need to sit here and apologize for something that I have no part of, but I can't help
it. Connected.
Well, yeah, we're all connected, but I have nothing to do with what, people did hundreds of years ago. That's,
Maybe not. You don't know who you were in a past life. If you believe in reincarnation,
well, yes,
we don't know. We don't know who we were previously. I was born in a Jewish family. In this life, a previous life, I might have been a Nazi in a concentration camp oppressing the Jews. I don't know. I don't remember. It's possible though. So, who knows, this life, I could be born in a black family in Harlem. In a life before that, I could be a slave trader, coming from Spain. We don't know. We don't know. But if you jump in a spaceship and you fly up above the earth and you look at the earth from above and you see all this craziness going on, it's all humanity doing it. And we're connected to all of humanity. So if we can take responsibility for, a part of humanity and the things that humanity have done collectively, things start changing within the consciousness of humanity. And yeah, on the one hand, we have to take responsibility for our own actions and be the best person we can be, but that's only part of the story. We're also part of a bigger thing. We're part of this whole species, this whole family of humanity. And someone's got to take responsibility for it. Those who were Nazis in the Second World War, pretty much all of them are dead now, so they're not going to put their hand up and say, yeah, sorry, that was a bad move. But if we can all collectively as humanity hold our hands up and say, yeah, this is what humanity has done, and it was wrong, and we take responsibility and we apologize, we ask for forgiveness. It's powerful.
I get where you're coming from, but this is my way of thinking, and I may be totally off base here, but let's say that I was a slave owner back in, a couple hundred years ago. But I am not that person now. And the things that I have done wrong in the past, I have asked for forgiveness. And it's, I was told that you move on from that and you grow. So why do I need to continue to apologize for something? I mean, it's like going to my mom and say, hey, you remember when I was 5 years old and I broke your dish? Well, I want to say I'm sorry for that again, even though I said I was sorry, 45 years ago, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, but that's
Well,
just,
let's
that's
look
just
at it.
me.
Let's. I feel where you're coming from. I try and put it from another perspective.
And I will say,
Let's say,
I hate the way things are now. I really do. I'm sorry that the things are the way they are. It's almost like my friends who they happen to be a different color. It's almost as if the rest of the people are trying to make it difficult for us to continue to be friends, even though we're not having any part of that. We're going to be friends no matter what. But then we get labeled traitors by these people who are supposed to be out there trying to change things. It makes no sense to me.
I agree. Yeah, it does. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I'm trying to think of a way to kind of look at this from a different angle. Let's say you have someone who's suffered something horrible. Let's say someone's a victim of abuse, okay? And they're talking to you about the situation. Now, it's not you that's abused them, but they're telling you their story and they're releasing their pain and releasing their emotions, and you're holding space for them through that process of them releasing what they're expressing, what they're feeling. By you telling that person that you're sorry for what they've experienced, you will lighten their load somewhat. And if you can somehow, almost as if you were the person that abused her, apologize for that abuse on behalf of that person, that lifts her, that makes her feel held and heard. And it's a way of empathizing. And empathy has the most amazing healing ability. But by putting yourself in position.
But once again, if you continue to apologize, doesn't it seem like it's just cliche and it really doesn't mean anything?
Watch to see the magic that happens from that, is what I would say. It's powerful. And, on the one hand, yeah, it's not your responsibility. But by taking responsibility for that, I'll give you an example. I was at a ceremony and it was working with some shamanic plant medicines. And there was a point in the ceremony where a woman she got very angry and she lost it, basically. And the guy who was running the space, I wouldn't say he quite stopped the ceremony, but he basically focused the energy on her and asked her to express what was going on for her. And she was feeling tremendous pain from a time when she'd been abused. But she was not just feeling the pain of that abuse, she was kind of feeling the abuse that all women have received from men for all time. So she was feeling a lot of pain. And what he did in that moment always stays in my mind. He said, I take full responsibility for the abuse of the masculine on the feminine, and for the abuse that you have experienced from that man. I take full responsibility for that, and I'm sorry. And I tell you what, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. But somehow or other, this energy of him taking that responsibility and him owning it, even though he was never there, it shifted something for her, and she had the most amazing healing release. And she was able to let go because she'd been holding on to it for so long. This pain, when we have this emotional pain, the heart tends to close down and tense around it, and that causes more pain. But by him actually taking that responsibility, she was able to soften and open and release and let go and let all of her pain come out. She cried a lot, but she released it. And after that moment, she was healed from that trauma.
Wow. That's why you're the shaman and I'm just sitting here doing a podcast.
Wow. I mean, it wasn't me that did that. It was a healer I saw do that. It was quite something. But we all have this ability, you know, we're all shamans. We all have the ability to create reality as we wish it to be. The people who have created this whole political situation, all the racism and all the control and the power, and, you know, they know that they can create reality by combining two forces. And those two forces are this electric energy of the mind and our thoughts, and the magnetic energy of the feelings. And when you combine these two forces together, that's what creates reality. So when somebody thinks about something and they have feelings which harmonize with those thoughts, reality is created. And it's really easy to do that with kind of negative thoughts and feelings. We see people how they really seem to have so much crap happen to them in their lives, all these terrible things, because when you listen to the things that they say to themselves, their self-talk is very negative. The way they feel about themselves is very derogatory. But the combination of those two energies together create a stream of horrible events in their life. And they're actually responsible for creating those because they're using their God-given ability to create reality. And it's those two centers of the being that create reality. Somehow or other, it seems a lot more difficult for most human beings to create a wonderful reality. It's easier to think about negative things than positive. However, if we create a vision in our mind of a world that is full of harmony and people getting on and everybody having abundance and all the food they need and all their needs met, people have, you know, jobs that they love and they enjoy, and you create this vision in the mind and you feel what it feels like to live in that world. Those two forces, those two energies get projected out into the universe, and what comes back is something that reflects what we put out. As you sow, so shall you reap. Whatever we put out into the universe comes back. So this is prayer. This is really what prayer is. You know, people think prayer is sitting down by, kneeling down at your side of your bed before you go to bed at night and says, "Oh Lord, please buy me a Mercedes-Benz." That's not really praying. What we do is we're sending energy out into the universe. And what we send out comes back to us. If you're praying for something, you're acknowledging the lack of that thing, and you're sending that lack energy out into the universe. It bounces off the fabric of reality and comes back to us with what we've prayed. The lack. Joni's never going to get the Mercedes-Benz. It wasn't Joni Mitchell, sorry.
It was Janis Joplin.
So, I don't think Janis ever had a Mercedes-Benz. Maybe someone can Google that and let me know. But probably not. Because you put such a powerful prayer out there of wanting and lacking the Mercedes-Benz is never going to come. Even people have got the best intention in the world of praying for world peace. By praying for world peace, you're basically projecting the lack of that. And then what comes back? The lack of world peace never comes back to us.
Wow.
But the people who are successful at manifesting, they pray something. They pray in something. They sense, they visualize, they imagine, they create a reality in their mind, and they couple that with the emotional content of what it feels like to have that. And they bring that into their lives. And that's how people manifest beautiful lives. The majority of people do it completely unconsciously with things they don't want. It's like around.
So when I sit down and I pray for people, and I pray for whatever it is that, their need is, if I'm praying that I would like to be able to help them do something, I mean, how do I go about that without making that negative reflection?
Well, it's in the language we use. There's this concept that we have that's called impeccable positivity. So making sure that all the words that you use to express your prayer is in positivity. So if you're talking about, curing a cancer, the focus is on the cancer. The universe, the mind, God, whatever you want to call it, doesn't hear not. It doesn't hear the negative. It's like, I want to be free from disease. It's like it's still thinking about the disease. So rather than think about being free from disease, think about being in full health. If you want to help people, think about what you would like their situation to be. So let's say you've got a friend who's, lost his job, struggling in poverty, and, can't afford to buy food and suffering in this way. So rather than thinking about, those aspects, just imagine, multiple streams of income coming into this guy's life. Think about how he could be earning money. Imagine how it would feel for him to be receiving, spontaneous, deposits into his bank account, or finding absolute joy and pleasure in the service that he desires to give to the world, and people being so grateful to receive his service that they pay him for it. Imagine that scenario, rather than think about, oh, my poor friend, his skin, please, help him not be poor.
Right.
Because he's still focused on the poverty.
So in other words, if I'm sitting down, I'm praying for my friend and he has lost his job, and I'm saying, Lord, it's going to be wonderful when he opens up his account tomorrow and he's got money in there. And I mean, I don't know. Am I saying it right, or, am I still bouncing negative,
Well, there's a certain time thing that we're bound by in this reality, Perhaps someone very powerful can wave a magic wand, and all of a sudden there's, $100,000 in his bank account. But, it's not so likely living in this reality, and we're aware of that. However, you can imagine your friend finding absolute joy in doing something that is a great service to his community, that becomes a business that he loves doing, that pays him really well. It's not such a difficult thing to imagine. So by creating that in your mind and feeling for him how it would feel for him to have that, that's the right vibration, that's the right energy to put out. Now, if you wanted to ramp that up a little bit, you get him to do the same. Or perhaps what you could do is you get a circle of people together and everybody focuses on the same thing. Everybody imagines that he explains his story, his situation, and everybody kind of collectively, with impeccable positivity, creates the vision and the feeling and sends that energy out as a prayer, as a ritual. In fact, there were some guys, and I think Henry Ford was one of them. I think Wrigley, the guy who created Wrigley's chewing gum, and there was a few other people. They used to get together and have these kind of brainstorming events. They would sit together around the table and they would each talk about their problems or their ideas, and everybody would give positive input. And all these people became some of the most successful people, in business in what was then the modern world, because essentially they understood that by getting all these heads together and putting all this energy into each person's creation, each person's manifestation, they were able to amplify that. And they were aware of the way to use language and in a positive, constructive way. And we can do the same thing for each other, for our communities, for our friends.
I definitely want to do that. That's been my goal since I've started this show, is to bring positivity out there to people. Because I know there's people that have been in the same situations that I've been in. You get into that dark place where you're tired of life and you need something to shine a light and show that there is more out there. There is happiness out there. But we get so focused on the negative in our lives that we don't realize things can be so much better.
I believe that's the case. And actually, this is kind of the majority of the work that I do when I'm doing, one-to-one healing sessions. It's not my job, I don't believe, to heal someone or to take away people's problems. Really, my job is to empower people. In fact, it's not even that. It's to teach people how they can empower themselves to change their reality. Because if I wave a magic wand and take away your pain, you haven't learned anything.
Exactly.
And if you were here to learn, then I've taken away an opportunity for you to heal and grow. If I can teach you how to do it, then, what is it they say? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day.
Yeah,
teach him how to fish, and he'll sit in a beer all day. No, that's not right.
Well, I have a friend of mine that's going through something right now, and he says, what am I going to do? And my advice to him was to go ahead and feel it. Get it out. Go through the motions, man. Whatever pain that you're going through, feel it and then overcome it. That's the only advice that I have to give. You have to go through these things in order to grow. I mean, just like a precious diamond, it's got to go through, that piece of coal has got to go through a lot of pressure for a long time before it becomes something precious.
Yeah, I agree.
Making myself
And
cry.
I'll talk for a little while so you can let that pass. As I said before, we live in a dualistic world. So on the one hand, yes, it's essential to feel what we feel. The feelings that we have, they are real. You know, okay, they're part of our temporary existence, they're not part of our eternal life. But while we're here on this planet, we have feelings, and if we suppress those feelings, that's not helpful to us. We're lying to ourselves in many ways. And if we continue to suppress those feelings over a long period of time, those feelings become more dense. They become something more physical, and that can manifest into disease. So a lifetime of suppressing emotions will make people sick, and that's not a good idea. However, we need to get to the cause, the roots, because perhaps some of those feelings are coming from a kind of aberrant thought process that comes from something we learnt before we knew better. What I mean by that is the majority of human beings are living their life programmed. When I say we're programmed, we're not programmed when we're children. A lot of people think that's the case. You know, we're born into a family, we get programmed, we get conditioned, we go to school, we get more conditioning, we watch the telly, we get more conditioning. It's not really like that. We program ourselves when we're 3 or 5 or 7. You know, we have this concept of reality, we have our relationships with our parents, we're trying to figure out the world, and we do the best we can. And let's say you've got a really aggressive mother, and the easiest way for you to deal with your relationship with your mother is just hide away in your room for most of your childhood. That can very often become a pattern, whereas an adult, that person's tendency is to keep themselves very small and very meek and out of the way because they don't want to rock the boat, piss anyone off. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're like 9 o'clock watershed or anything.
Hey, this is a safe place, man. You say what you need to say, and don't worry about the language.
So the challenge is that most people, as they grow into adults, do not ever rewrite their programs. So they continue living with those, essentially a world view, a world construct that's created by a toddler. And all of their beliefs are based on that childhood program. They never stop to think about it. So busy dealing with life. But the ideas that they have in their head about what's coming towards them in their life is so outdated, it's so immature that they don't ever change those programs. And we really need to look at that. Because perhaps all the stuff that's going on in somebody's life that's not very nice is something that we've created from an old program that needs overwriting. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, we need to feel the feelings, but we need to know, are those feelings coming from something, you know, present in the moment, or are they coming from an old belief system? You know, something happens that stimulates a thought in the mind, and that thought stimulates a feeling, and that happens so quickly we're not aware of it. Is that whole process kicked off by a belief system that happened that we created when we were 5? If it is, we really need to look at that. And like, you know, do I want to live my life as a 5-year-old in an adult body? That's not really very helpful. Exactly. That might be why I'm having arguments with my spouse, you know, why this lockdown is so traumatic, because, you know, I'm basically, my 5-year-old self is bumping against her 5-year-old self, and, you know, it's like a playground scenario. But, you know, if we can realize that's what's going on, and it is for most of us, and we can overwrite and clear those programs, witness them, be aware of them, experience those feelings where they've come from, and get ourselves, we can start saying, okay, you know, we don't need to behave like that anymore. We create a new way of being. You know what? I've got a great new idea. I'm going to listen to you. And whatever you say, I'm going to listen to. I'm not going to chuck my own ego stories in there. I'm just going to hear you out. You feel like that? Okay, you feel like that. How else do you feel? And then communication is much easier in relationship, and everything's about relationship. So if someone's suffering with their work situation, chances are it's because of relationships with people in that work scenario. So we can trace everything back to these old stories. This is a massive part of healing. And we can all take responsibility for that.
It's true. And, you know, my wife, she's very blessed because she's got to spend this whole lockdown with me. And, you know, I'm an angel. So and if you believe that, I have some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. No, but seriously, you're exactly right. You know, we can't keep living our lives like we're 5 years old. I've lived in a bubble for most of my life, you know, timid, always getting pushed around and you know, never wanting to really express myself. And then I got with Michelle, and she kind of clicked that on in my brain that, hey, you don't have to live like that all the rest of your life. I mean, it took me 40 something years to learn the lesson, but I'm like, you know what? I've put myself in this comfortable spot where I'm living close to home, everything that is close to where I grew up, you know, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to miss family and friends. It's not like I'm never going to see them. It's time to expand myself. So we moved out here to Austin, and you know, I'm experiencing new things. And I mean, looking at a guy that stuttered most of his life, and I'm doing a podcast. If I can do these things, anybody can do these things. And it's not that I'm not any more special than anybody else. You just gotta be determined to do these things and let yourself grow. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. It's back to you.
Yeah, how wonderful, you know, like 40 is the new, you know, life begins at 40, they say. And I think it takes a certain amount of years to kind of get to know ourselves. And then we need to get to know ourselves again because, you know, we're, you know, up to the age of almost 30, you know, we're trying to figure out who we are as a person. You know, we get through the childhood and then we're like, well, we're an adult now. What do we want to do with our lives? And then we start looking at, you know, kind of bumping up against other people and starting to see the faults we have in ourselves. And from the age of 40, I think a lot of people really start doing some deep work to kind of unpick their shadow and their programs. And I think this is why life, they say, begins at 40, because we have this new opportunity to reinvent ourselves.
40's the new 20, man.
I didn't know Jack at 20. You know, I thought I knew everything when I was 20.
Oh, you know,
I was still a child.
If anybody's out there listening or watching this, and if you've never heard the song before, there's a song by 𝗜'𝗺 Speedwagon called "Keep Pushing On." Listen to that song. Listen to the lyrics. Even if you only listen to it one time because you hate that kind of music, listen to it one time. Those words in there are so powerful because you don't learn to live until you learn to live alone.
You want to play that at the end of this podcast?
If there wasn't copyrights, I would, believe me.
That's the thing. Yeah. Funny world we live in.
Yeah, you have to be careful, you know.
That's a good point.
Good point. Man, dude, believe it or not, we've been on here for nearly an hour. Just
wow.
Flies on by.
So fast when I chat.
Well, you talk to me, and it goes by so fast because you're talking to me.
Yeah, it's hard to shut me up when I get going.
No, man, that's what everybody deserves, a platform, and that's what this is for. I'll fill in a few little gaps here and there, but whoever's on my show, if they've got something to say, they need to be able to say it. Whether we like it or not, people should be able to say what they have to say. That's what the basis of this country was for, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you provide a really nice service for people to express themselves. You provide a really nice service for people to hear some nice, diverse opinions. And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I really appreciate your show and what you offer people. It's a really, really beautiful thing. And I hope you keep going with it. You're bringing a lot of wisdom and joy into people's lives. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I'm humbled. Honestly, that means a lot.
I'm humbled to be in.
Well, you know what? I don't think we should just end it right here. We should do this again sometime in the future, because I think people can really benefit from this kind of information and knowledge. So will you grace our presence again?
I would be very honored to come back and chat with you some more. Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Man, thank you. Thank you. Really. I hope somebody that's getting to experience this moment that we are right now, that they will pass that on and be able to grow. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining us, and please tune in again. I want to have more people like this on my show to maybe help spread some positivity in this world. So thank you once again. And thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and on Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.